Audience, Dr. Goldberg. Please come forward. We look forward to your testimony in opposition to the legislation. You have 5 minutes, ma'am. Please proceed.
And committee members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm Sharon Goldberg. I'm an internal medicine physician. I've practiced medicine for 21 years, and my background is mostly academic, internal medicine, hospital-based, clinical research, and medical education. I am going to skip many of the things I wanted to say because I didn't realize it was only 5 minutes. Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do. 5G is a conversation about unsustainable healthcare expenditures. Why do I say this? We've been sitting on the evidence for EMR and chronic disease for decades. And now we are seeing all these epidemics appearing. So diabetes is the first epidemic. I think most of you know the statistics. They're very scary. 1 in 3 American children will become diabetic in their lifetime, and if they're Hispanic females, the number is 1 in 2. Okay. So what does this have to do with wireless radiation? Wireless radiation and other electromagnetic fields, such as magnetic fields and dirty electricity, have been clearly associated with elevated blood sugar and diabetes. That is what the peer-reviewed literature says. It is not opinion. The closer you live to a cell tower, the higher your blood glucose. That is based on hemoglobin A1C measurements. So the idea with small cells of putting the cells closer to people's homes and bedrooms scientifically is very dangerous. And from an economic perspective, it's dangerous. And you may not know this. I was shocked to find this out. But the way you create a model of diabetes in rats in the lab is by exposing them to 2.4 gigahertz. And this is not for long-term exposure. So I don't have time to talk about the costs, but the huge problem with diabetes really is chronic kidney disease. End-stage renal disease, the worst complication of diabetes, leads to hemodialysis. Hemodialysis is an automatic qualification for Medicare. And if you don't qualify for Medicare, we still have to dialyze the patient. And the state ends up paying in many different instances. So renal failure is 1% of Medicare, but it takes up 7% of all Medicare expenditures. I don't have time to talk about this anymore, but once again, so the other epidemics that clearly link from the science with electromagnetic radiation are related to mental health. And this is straight from PubMed. This isn't my opinion. This is science.
Dr.
Okay?
Goldberg, for those of us who aren't physicians, what is PubMed?
I'm sorry. It's just it's our National Library of Medicine. This is where you would go. This is just the peer-reviewed literature. So we have 3 epidemics that clearly, they're essentially one epidemic. We have deterioration of mental health in the United States. And if you look really at the science, what does it show? And these epidemics are our suicide epidemic, epidemics in violent, shootings, and the opioid epidemic. And I don't have 5 minutes is not the time to talk about this. This is in the peer-reviewed literature. I have a file to submit for the record, but these are facts. These are things that have just been glossed over by the wireless industry, and I really don't have time to talk about them in 5 minutes. I wish I did. But we need to examine our epidemics in the context of our EMF exposures. What does that mean? That means that the CDC, tracking these epidemics, we need to start measuring how much radiation are people being exposed to. And before we roll out 5G, and this means there are 4 kinds of electromagnetic fields that we know are harmful to human health. So radio frequency radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, and electric fields, okay? Our exposure any given person, and all humans are affected by EMFs. Our given exposure has nothing to do with the research that my colleagues are going to cite with the National Toxicology Program. That is an assessment of the risk of one cell phone in the near field, okay? What is our exposure in a day? It's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up. And this is a serious problem for occupational health, public safety, and personal safety. And I feel that it's irresponsible to be even talking about the Internet of Things and rolling out a new untested technology when we're not even measuring what are our current exposures from the current networks.
Doctor, appreciate your testimony. Would you again provide us with your credentials? You said at the beginning.
Yes, I'm an MD. I'm board certified in internal medicine. I've been assistant professor at different medical schools, mostly in New York, most recently the University of Miami. And I got interested in electromagnetic fields after my administrator at the University of Miami gave me a new iPhone. I used it for 20 minutes on speaker, and my finger was burning at the end of the call. So that was years ago. I started reading about the science and connecting with other scientists, and really my expertise, I've taken care of a lot of patients with chronic disease. So when I talk about diabetes and, for instance, heart failure, that, the National Toxicology Program shows clear evidence of cardiomyopathy in that study. In other words, that's a precursor to congestive heart failure. And I want to just read one thing, if you'll allow me. This is from the United States Renal Data System, Healthcare Expenditures for Persons with Chronic Kidney Disease. So over half of the 2015 Medicare spending for beneficiaries aged 65 and older was for those who had diagnoses of CKD, diabetes mellitus, or heart failure. All three of these conditions, when you look as an independent scientist, not someone who's funded by wireless, all of those three conditions are linked. So diabetes and heart failure are linked with EMF exposures. It's very clear.
Doctor, what are you're a trained medical professional?
Yes.
We don't have one on the panel. What are we to make of the American Cancer Society, for example, telling us there's no evidence of harmful product?
Well, at this point, there's a national and international 5G appeal. I don't know how many thousands of people have signed, but the point is that many of these organizations have conflicts of interest, and I can't speak to, I don't know who's on their board, who made these decisions. My testimony comes from, I've been reading this literature for years. And really I got interested in it because I spent my career taking care of so many patients who were sick in the hospital that when I found out about the links, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it. So I've read these articles myself, and the experts who don't work for telecom and who are in their independent research, everyone comes to the same conclusion. This isn't, we're not in a place where we should be debating this anymore. This is exactly what happened with tobacco. It's the exact same thing. And really, right now, the only people protecting, the only people who are able to protect Americans are our legislators, because we don't have any relevant regulatory guidelines to protect human health. The FCC guidelines were developed for short-term exposures, 6 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on it's a phone or an outdoor exposure. And they have absolutely no connection to the biological effects that have been very clearly summarized in the Bio Initiative. That's a huge document generated. All of the summaries are there. And I've got it here for you if anyone wants to read it. I have very concise summaries and abstracts documenting everything that I'm saying. So I know there are plenty of people here that are probably rolling their eyes, but in academic medicine, we have a name for what's happening now with 5G. This is called, and what has happened with wireless communication, this is called, 5G is an untested application of a technology that we know is harmful. We know it from the science. This is, in academics, this is called human subjects research. Human subjects research is very tightly regulated. You can't just roll out some type of a research project on human beings unless, A, you have their informed consent, so they understand the risks and benefits, and B, you have the approval, like someone has actually, examined the literature and said, okay, this research project, we believe that it's safe. There's no evidence in the science to indicate that it would not be safe. We have decades of evidence to show that it is not safe.
Thank you, Dr. Goldberg.
Thank you.
And very briefly, if you can, what do you mean by conflict of interest?
I mean that, so I've taught, one of the things that I taught in medical school is evidence-based medicine, so teaching medical students and residents how to critically evaluate the literature, the science. And one of the first things that you teach residents is that you always have to look at the funding. So, and you can read about it. Marcia Engel, the editor of New England Journal, just wrote a great op-ed in the New York Times about researchers who are funded by private industry. The results of their research are much more likely to support whatever it is that is being funded. That's clearly.
Representative Garrett has a question.
Yes.
Good morning, doctor. Just
Good
a
morning.
really quick question. What is the normal RMF that individual could be exposed to? And if these small cells are installed, what is the prediction of how much RMF the human body would experience? And then the second question would be, if we know that RMF is a issue, do we limit the amount of exposure that somebody with cardio issues in the hospitals, whether they're going through a CAT scan so are we limiting that because we know that just small cells alone is not the issue? It's, as you talked about earlier, it's the sandwich. So give me the normal levels, what the prediction is that the human body would experience moving forward.
Well, I'm so glad that you're asking that question. And the answer is that, well, no one's measuring. And that is the problem. That's the problem. Because we have, and the way I think about this is in an occupational health perspective. I think about, because people go to work and so for instance, your exposure will depend on what you do in a given day. So if one cell phone causes cancer, clear evidence of cancer, DNA damage, heart damage, well, what happens if you work at an airport? What happens if you work in a stadium where there are 100,000 people coming to watch a football game and everyone's using their phone at the same time? And so the problem is that we have a very, very systematic, clear, empiric way to measure these exposures, and it's a discipline called building biology, and we actually have someone here trained in building biology, and I asked him to bring the meters. If anyone after this meeting is interested, I can show anyone exactly how we measure, okay? But that is the problem, that we don't measure, and there are certain situations relevant to public safety where we really do need to be measuring, with firefighters, with airline pilots. Because when you activate microwave radiation inside an enclosed metal space, you get amplification, you have increased power density. So think about it, an airplane, everyone's with their devices, every device is emitting radiation, and the access point is right next to the cockpit usually. So what does this do to pilots? What does this do to firefighters? We already have a submission to the FCC from Susan Foster about firefighters that were unable to function in the line of duty. This is from 2013, after exposure to a cell tower that was put up near their station, and they also have two-way communication devices that they wear. So we have to measure these exposures. That is the start, and not go ahead and roll out a whole bunch of Internet of Things with more devices that we're not even measuring what we're exposed to now.
Doctor, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Well, I joined the Royal Navy in 1960, and I specialised in microwave warfare. Radar, obviously, which uses microwave, but they don't just teach you radar, they teach you all about microwaves and other uses. So I understood about microwave warfare and how it can damage people, how it can harm people. Microwaves then were used as weapons, as they are today. It is a perfect stealth weapon, and when governments don't like a group of people, for instance, the ladies who protest at Greenham Common in England about the American missile base they camped, they were microwaved. We microwaved Catholics in Northern Ireland to make them sick. It goes on all over the world. And it's a weapon that you don't know you're being targeted because the dose is very, very low, which is actually more dangerous than a high dose. It's very, very low, and it may take a year or two, but you can cause neurological damage and cancers with low-level microwaves, and you can make all your opponents sick. It's a perfect weapon for a government.
Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in a 5G world. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, requiring massive deployment of small cells. We won't wait for the standards. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive. We must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners, and that's damn important. The interconnected world of the future will be the result of decisions we must make today.
The main issue before us today is Senate Bill 637 and Senate Bill 894, the former by Senator Hugh and the latter by Senator Knopf. We're going to invite the first four witnesses in support of the legislation, and that would be John Jones with Sprint, David Lewis and Andy Emerson with AT&T, Neil Krevda with Verizon, and Frank Iacovetti Jr. with T-Mobile.
So be straight with me. Is it true?
It could be. No,
Well,
come
very,
on. There's
very
no
few
scientific
cases.
proof
There
at
was an
all.
unfortunate
It's really a
incident out in
complicated
Iowa.
situation.
Look, gentlemen, practice these words in front of the mirror. Although we are constantly exploring the subject, currently, there is no direct evidence that links cell phone usage to brain cancer.
I'm Sharon Goldberg. I'm an internal medicine physician. I've practiced medicine for 21 years, and my background is mostly academic, internal medicine, hospital-based, clinical research, and medical education.
I'm a certified Microsoft small business specialist. I worked on space station designing the cabling system for the airlock module, where I was responsible for EMI/EMC analysis, which is electromagnetic interference, electromagnetic compatibility.
I am a professor in the Department of Epidemiology, Biostatistics, and Occupational Health, and I teach there both toxicology and health effects of electromagnetic radiation.
My name is Daphne Tachover, and I'm the founder of an organization called We Are the Evidence. We are an organization that represents the many adults and unfortunately many children who have become very sick from wireless technology radiation.
There seems to be a couple false Easter eggs being put out there right now. I want to make sure we dispel that right off the gate.
The effects of wireless on health scientifically are very, very clear.
So it's always pushed back to the definition of an acceptable level of radiation. And that's what this is, by the way. This is about radiation.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period.
My name is Dr. Angie Kolbeck. I've been reviewing the studies showing the impacts of wireless radiation on our health, and there are now thousands of studies showing the following adverse health impacts to wireless radiation: cancer, oxidative damage, DNA failure.
Things like memory, dizziness, anxiety, brain fog.
Headaches, nosebleeds, cognitive problem, exhaustion.
We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure.
Short and long-term memory loss, decreased attention spans, lower reaction times, even involuntary contractions of muscles causing misalignments of spines and jaws.
Breast cancer. We suddenly have breast cancer in women who have no DNA predisposition.
Disrupted immune function and change in stress proteins, reproductive and fertility effects.
There are dozens and dozens of studies that show beyond any doubt what this radiation is doing to our sperm. Now, if you take the cell phone out of your pocket, the sperm will recuperate within 3 to 4 months. What would not recuperate would be the damage to the DNA of the sperm. That is irreparable. The wife of the ex-governor of Indiana was diagnosed with glioblastoma. Same brain tumor Ted Kennedy had and John McCain had. Did you look at John McCain's scar? This is a cell phone brain tumor. LeBron James, one of our sports people, had a salivary gland tumor. That is another cell phone tumor. You didn't hear about it because immediately after that was discovered, he was paid by Samsung to become their spokesperson.
We are seeing increases in brain tumors. We're seeing increases in Alzheimer's. We're seeing increases in all of the neurotransmitter diseases, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's. These are all disease systems that are known to be associated with low-level energy exposures.
We talk about 24/7, around-the-clock exposure, wherever you are and your whole body. You never get away from it. And it seems from our studies that maybe your immune system can cope with for a time, but it will deteriorate. Then the irradiation will definitely damage cells at a deeper level, and the question is what will then happen?
These are out of peer-reviewed papers, so these are not just hypochondriacs thinking that they're doing it. We're having real problems with this.
This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do.
There is scientifically evidence that is so strong that you can be certain that the standards used by the FCC to manage health effects are wrong.
We need to start measuring how much radiation are people being exposed to before we roll out 5G. There are 4 kinds of electromagnetic fields that we know are harmful to human health. So radio frequency radiation, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, and electric fields, okay? Our exposure, any given person, and all humans are affected by EMFs. What is our exposure in a day? It's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up.
The data we're going to look at are all published science, testing results, or public standards. At the bottom end of the radiation scale of what's called power density, or signal strength, is the minimum level at which cell phones will work, which was found to be 0.2 billionths of a microwatt per centimeter squared. Pine needles were found to age prematurely at 0.00027. At short-term exposures of 0.05, children aged 8 to 17 experienced headache, irritation, concentration difficulties, and behavioral problems. 0.1 is the biobiology or building biology guideline for extreme concern. 1.0 produced sperm DNA fragmentation and a decrease in sperm viability in vitro. Also at 1.0, the science shows the following bodily effects can occur: headaches, dizziness, fatigue, insomnia, chest pain, difficulty breathing, and indigestion. 2.5 saw altered calcium metabolism in heart muscle cells. 4.0, changes in the hippocampus affecting brain memory and learning. And at 6.0, DNA damage in cells. So where are smart meters on this list? Electrical Power Institute in December 2010 measured a single Itron smart meter with pulses up to 7.93 microwatts per centimeter squared. Our own testing indicated approximately 8.0 with 1 meter. These tests are at a close distance, approximately 1 foot away from the meter, but an infant's crib could be just as close on the other side of the wall where the meter or bank of meters are installed. Even though there are all these known health effects at levels far lower, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg see fit to set the standard at 9.5. And China, Poland, and Russia, 10.0. This is the same level at which behavior has been altered, producing reflexes of avoidance following 30-minute exposures. A room of 12 smart meters, very common and even a conservative number in an apartment building, tested at 19.8 microwatts per centimeter squared. This is hundreds of times higher than levels which clearly indicate harmful effects. So how can utilities and governments get away with forcing these devices on everyone? This is how. In Canada and the US and several other civilized countries, the safety limit is set at 600 to 1,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. This so-called safety limit is literally tens of thousands of times higher than levels which are known to damage health according to peer-reviewed published science.
The FCC is a capture agency. They probably conducted what I believe to be the biggest fraud on the public ever conducted.
The FCC has been described by Harvard University's Center for Ethics writer Norman Alster as the most captured agency in D.C., acting more as an industry cheerleader than a regulator. This is especially true today with 5G, where there are serious safety concerns and potentially misleading information coming from the FCC.
For example, the previous chairman of the FCC is Tom Wheeler. He was the head of the Wireless Lobby Association for 14 years. Now remember, Obama told us there would be no lobbyists in his administration, so he took the biggest lobby and put him as a head of the FCC.
And that's damn important.
In 1993, the FCC started a rulemaking to adopt the IEEE regulations on this issue. IEEE is an engineer association. Why is it that we adopt regulation of engineers who maybe know how to measure this radiation when it's passing a wall, but not when it's passing a body? All our health agencies objected it, saying that it makes no sense to adopt engineer association, that they had not even one biomedical person on their team.
They are effectively indemnified against adverse health impact lawsuits when the acceptable limits are higher than the limits actually shown to show harmful health effects.
The FCC guidelines were developed for short-term exposures, 6 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on it's a phone or an outdoor exposure. And they have absolutely no connection to the biological effects that have been very clearly summarized in the Bio Initiative.
So as you can see, there's a number of individuals in this room today that have serious concerns about this as regards to their health. If one of your companies decides to put one of these small cells up at a pole that's within, say, 50 feet of one of their houses, what recourse do they have to say, is there a way to move it somewhere else?
There's language in the bill so that the authority can require the applicant to come forth with certification of compliance with the FCC's rules related to radio frequency emission.
Remember that denial of request or denial permit request that you can put in? It's going to point back to the acceptable levels as determined by the FCC, not the EPA or not the CDC, the ones who usually take care of health concerns, but by the FCC, which is staffed by former members of the telecommunication industry. That's the fox guarding the hen house.
It's a fact that most insurance companies will not indemnify against EMF effects. Telecom companies around the world are warning their investors of potential major costs due to real or alleged risks of EMF pollution from their products. Interestingly enough, they're warning their investors, but they're not telling their customers. They're basically keeping it quiet because that's where their money comes from. So we're using technology that could be very potentially harmful to us, and the investors know it, but their only worry is that they might lose money, not that our health might be affected.
First of all, I think what you should really think about is why is it that they're not insured? It's not that they chose to be self-insured. They actually rejected by the insurance company from being insured because they understand the risk. And
so the insurance companies, the big insurance companies, will not insure the telecommunications?
So there's insurance companies, and then there's what's called secondary insurance companies. Secondary insurance companies are the insurance companies that insure the insurance companies. So in an event, an insurance company, let's say I insure Verizon, and it may not be able to meet the claims, then the secondary insurance company is kicking in.
Like Lloyd's of London?
Sorry?
Like
Yes,
Lloyd's of
exactly.
London?
So two leading ones would be Lloyd's of London and Swiss Re. Both told the insurance company not to insure the wireless industry, and this is why they're not insured. And that should give you a hint. Now, this is exactly why they have to prevent a health lawsuit. And how do they prevent lawsuit? That goes back to Section 704. Section 704 was passed in 1996. This is how our rights in regards to health were taken away by the wireless industry. What this legislation did, it gave the power to regulate the health effects of wireless technology to the FCC. FCC is a spectrum auctioning agency. It's not a health agency. They don't even have one biomedical person on their team. And then the other thing that Section 704 did, it actually took the power from the states to regulate location of cell towers based on health. And what does it mean? It means that if they want to put a cell tower in front of your home, you cannot go to your city council and say, hey, stop, I don't want it. I just heard in a lecture that there are 10,000 studies proving that it's harmful. I don't want it. My child is sick. They will tell you, stop. You're not allowed to mention this in the city council because Section 704 says that if you will, and if the application will be rejected, the city will be sued, can be sued by the wireless industry.
A major U.S. government study on rats finds a link between cell phones and cancer.
Very first government study linking the radiation from cell phones to cancer.
Two-decade, $30 million federal study out today found there is some evidence of a link between cell phone radiation and brain cancer.
Professor, what is the NDP? I've heard that study several times. NDP is what?
So it's a $25 million study on rats and mice that was supposed to demonstrate that there were no effects of radiation below thermal. And in fact, it demonstrated exactly the opposite. And it follows on the heels of two major studies on animals that said exactly the same thing.
And that study was designed perfectly to make sure that it cannot be challenged, that there will not be any doubt. That's why it took them 14 years. That's how they prevented discussion of health. And why do they want to prevent discussion of health if there's no problem with health?
Simply put, FCC is completely unprepared, unable, and possibly unwilling to oversee 5G for safety, even as it barrels toward us. They are falling back on tired definitions and panaceas long since disproven by science. To make matters worse, recent FCC rulings and numerous industry-friendly bills passed at state and federal levels between 2016 and 2018 removed the last vestiges of local and state review over infrastructure siting, just when we need it the most.
When those first studies were performed years and years ago, nobody knew about the importance of the microbiome, the role of the microbiome and the immune system, and even less the role of the microbiota inside our brains, that is, the microbes that are normally resident inside our brains, whose influence on brain function is nothing but immense. And you may think, well, who cares about the microbes? The less microbes we have, the better it is. Well, we know by now that this is not absolutely the case, because microbes are truly essential for the development and function of all our organs and systems. Our immune system is based on the microbes we have in our gut. And our brain also has microbes that influence its function.
In tests, it's been found things like mold. If you grow mold inside a Faraday cage, it'll grow one way, and then even if the electromagnetic fields are around, take the Faraday cage away and some sort of 600 biotoxins are developed within the mold. because of the effects of the EMFs upon it. Electromagnetic fields, even of weak quality, have an effect upon our microbiome, which is really essential to our whole being.
You have to consider that DNA also works as a fractal antenna, which is able to send and receive and also to process signals under the form of radio frequencies. Well, then there is no doubt that artificial radio frequencies, such as those of cell towers, and in particular these new types of towers that have a much higher density of signals, they may somehow interfere with the ability of DNA to retain and transmit biological signals. So this is one level of danger that very few biologists are aware of.
How much effort was put forward to address this, what most of these people are, or many of these people are here for, which are the health concerns? Was there any dialogue back and forth? Was there any working? Was there many studies evaluated to look at regarding this area?
Maybe not every person that has concerns on the legislation was brought to the table.
Okay, so from your perspective, you feel that there was a legitimate amount of time to evaluate the data that the opposition would have on this?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't put forth something that I didn't believe in. And I'll tell you, as I mentioned earlier, and it's been commented several times amongst the panel here, this is truly an economic development issue. Our 3-year-old, again at home, is outraged when we pull out the driveway and he's not able to access Wi-Fi.
I think anyone who puts Wi-Fi into a school should be locked up for the rest of their life. I really do. I think they're not fit to walk on the surface of this planet because they haven't looked at the research, and whatever incentive they have, it is not worth the genetic problems that parents are going to face with their children when they're born.
France has banned Wi-Fi in nursery schools and put warnings out for regular schools because they're finding there's impaired learning capacity in children when they're around Wi-Fi. And they have to put up warning signs where they put Wi-Fi transmitters.
When I got sick and I learned that they're putting Wi-Fi in the schools in Israel, I was very sick at the time, but I could not tolerate the thought that children in the schools will become as sick as I have. And after a few months of correspondence, I submitted a Supreme Court case in Israel to ban the use of Wi-Fi in the schools and replace them with wired network. The 4 top diseases that kill our children, our young adults right now, are brain tumors, thyroid cancer, testis cancer, rectal cancer, everywhere we put our cell phones. And a lot of our children are sick and they're being misdiagnosed and mistreated because the wireless industry has put billions and billions of dollars in the past 30 years to mislead the public as to the health effects and keep the public uninformed.
We are performing an experiment on children. We are exposing children to microwave radiation for 6 hours during every school day. We have had absolutely no studies looking at the long-term effects of this radiation on young people or even on adults.
A considerable amount of research shows that developing brains and bodies of children are much more affected than adults. And there are clear indications of a link between increased electromagnetic fields and autism spectrum disorders.
We took 10 autistic children and went back to the sleeping location where the mother was when she was pregnant with that child and compared it with the sleeping location of a mother that gave birth to healthy children. We had 10 mothers in that group, 10 mothers in this group, and in the group of the autistic children, we found that the measurements that we got for the microwave exposure was elevated compared to the group of children that were normal. The fetus is affected. The exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields has become the first factor that could be isolated ever in autism that could predict autism.
The 5th generation of wireless technology, or 5G as it's being rolled out worldwide without safety testing. Let me say that again, without safety testing, and how we've got scientists and doctors and environmental organizers saying, stop this. Because in terms of the effects of wireless radiation, the science is in. Wireless radiation can lead to cancerous heart tumors, brain tumors, DNA damage. Wireless radiation is linked to infertility, to autism, Alzheimer's, and more. And guess what? All the effects that I just listed, those are some of the effects that are known according to the technology that's being seen today.
First of all, you have to know that we know that the other EMFs that we're exposed to are already known to be health risks. And basically that 5G, because of the frequency that's going to be used and because of the extraordinarily high pulsation levels that will be used, is a much bigger threat to our health than the things that we already have, which are very substantial threats to our health. We're not just talking about the intensity. We're talking about the frequency and the very high level of pulsations. There's a huge literature which shows that pulsed EMFs, EMFs that pulse up and down very rapidly, are in most cases much more biologically active than our non-pulsed EMFs. Every single wireless communication device communicates via pulsations, but the industry completely ignores this issue. The problem with 5G is that they're planning to put out tens of millions of these antennae all over the place without doing one single biological safety test.
Are you implying possibly that we, the consumers, are the guinea pigs since they haven't really done tests to see the effects in a smaller setting?
I mean, that's not an implication, it's a statement. We are, yes.
Cancer is not the main concern that I have. I'm really concerned about sperm count and about effects on pregnancy.
How many of you know that 1 in 6 American couples is unable to have a child when they want to? How many of you know that last year the birth rate in this country dropped the most that it ever has in recent history, 3% in a single year?
People look at the sperm, and people use cell phones, and the sperm, usually sperm swim, and they swim straight. But if you expose them to radio frequency, mobile phone waves, they swim in circle.
Studies have been done here in Australia, taking sperm from healthy men. And one test tube gets exposed to cell phone radiation, and one test tube is not exposed to mobile phone radiation. And then the results are evaluated. And this is a measure of vitality. We measure how well the sperm swim. This is a measure of motility. This is a measure of mitochondrial DNA damage. They have 3 times as much damage on their DNA if they have been exposed to mobile phone radiation. The data on that are rock solid. Cell phones can damage sperm quantity and quality.
Your embryo, your uterus in the fetus, where your child is developing for the first 100 days, in the ovaries, the eggs do not have that protection. So they are at maximum risk from radiation. And for the first month or so, you wouldn't even know you were pregnant. You wouldn't even be taking precautions. That is the main danger area. So you give birth to a daughter, but her ovaries are now contaminated. She may be normal, she may be genetically damaged, but her ovaries are at the most risk. So when your daughter grows up and she becomes pregnant and has a baby, this is where one of these eggs will be fertilized and come out. So the real damage here is your grandchildren. That is where it is going to show most.
Do you think that there is a chance that within the 3rd generation of females, they may be irreversibly sterile?
Not in the 3rd generation, but in the 5th generation, and that would for humans be something in the order of 150 years ahead of us. And of course, then it's too late to say that you are sorry, and it's very too late to say stop. there is a wealth of papers. I mean, we're talking about thousands of published papers in the scientific literature, few of which, or sometimes none of which, have entered the official documentations from authorities and likewise. So I think it's really time to have an independent compilation of data. Such was done at August 31st, 2007 in the form of the Bioinitiative report, of which I was one of the authors. And then we put together approximately 2,000 scientific references on a little bit more than 600 pages, clearly saying that if you, for instance, if you are a rat or a mouse or a cell or a molecule, you should definitely not allow yourself to be exposed to this. And in the meantime, we have this full-scale experiment using our own kids.
One interesting case, John Patterson, he was a telecommunications engineer in Sydney, Australia. Very brilliant man.
For 20 years, John tested Telstra digital systems. Over the time, he realised the dangers of electromagnetic radiation.
It disrupts the bioelectric system of your body, which is really your brain, your nervous system, how your muscles talk.
And he tried warning of these effects through different agencies, through his company.
Got all the test gear out and measured it and drew up a report, and I was immediately removed from service.
Finally, in 2007, he took matters into his own hand. He commandeered a used British Army tank and went and destroyed 6 cell phone towers in Sydney, Australia, because he wanted to stop this. He was trying to make a point.
The message was that how dangerous it was.
Current public exposure levels are at least 1 quintillion, that's 18 zeros, 1 quintillion times above natural background radiation, according to Professor Olle Johansson of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. The highly dangerous biological effects of EMFs have been documented by thousands of studies since 1932, indicating that we may be facing a global health catastrophe orders of magnitude worse than those caused by tobacco and cigarettes. 5G is designed to deliver concentrated and focused electromagnetic radiation in excess of 100 times current levels, in the same way as do directed energy weapons. There is currently an international appeal signed by 237 EMF scientists from 41 nations, urging the UN and particularly the WHO to exert strong leadership in fostering the development of more protective EMF guidelines, encouraging precautionary measures and educating the public about the considerable health risks, particularly the risks to children and fetal development.
Sorry, because we are talking with someone that is a little bit ignorant on these things. We're talking to the Wi-Fi systems. I become worried because I put those devices in my house. I will have to, I confess my ignorance on this. We will have to, but I'm going to raise this with WHO, which I think is the organization that might be able to deal with it properly, because I must confess I was not aware of that danger.
In 1996, when the Telecommunications Act was passed, in it was a provision essentially that kept local officials from addressing health issue concerns when approving or not approving a cell tower. So
that's correct.
But then something new is happening. We've talked a lot about it on the Solari report, thanks to Jason Bogdan-Smith and his website EMF Warriors. But this is new. This is very, very new. So you're basically, sending out an appeal on something that in one sense hasn't happened yet. This is not just an incremental change. This is a big step up.
It's a sea change. An onslaught's not an improper word. It's a bombardment. So instead of a cell tower 1 mile or 2 miles from you and you still have cell phone service, we're going to have antennas every block, and some poor soul is going to have one mounted to a utility pole maybe less than 20 meters from their home. So this kind of, invasive bombardment with this many antennas, just in 1 square mile, if you do the math, 1 per block and 16 blocks per mile, that's about 250 antennas per square mile. The millimeter wave is untested. Former FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler openly said that they don't plan to test.
We won't wait for the standards.
And then our appeal also addresses the fact that there's a plan to roll out 5G through satellites in low Earth orbit. So 20,000 satellites, which will cover every square foot of the planet with a 5G signal.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Night after night, politicians and other leaders were telling Americans that Sputnik revealed that we were at great risk.
Not just our pride, but our security is at stake.
If Russia wins dominance of this completely new area, well, I think the consequences are fairly plain. Probable Soviet world domination.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Welcome, everybody, to the White House. This is White House 5G Summit. My name is Justin Clark. I'm the Director of Public Liaison, and we are thrilled to have you here today. Really happy to be joined by a lot of leaders in industry, members of Congress and the Senate, White House leaders on this, and people from the FCC. Before we start, one, we are government, so don't assume we know anything, okay?
I do agree, I don't know anything.
I have become accustomed to giving speeches in my new position on subjects about which I frankly know very little. And we need more cell towers and connections in Connecticut, my home state. It's ridiculous.
The U.S. is in the lead thanks to our private sector as well as the work of the FCC and this administration overall. But China and South Korea and many other countries are eager to claim this mantle.
We have every intention to deploy 5G first and reap the benefits of faster and more robust wireless.
Yes, I hope we beat China, of course,
and get to gigabit speeds and low latency, and the race has begun.
Let there be no mistake. The race to 5G is a sprint. Winning the global race to 5G, it's a national priority. We must bear in mind the national security implications of winning the race on 5G.
Today we're talking about the importance of being first in 5G, continued commitment to putting America first in the race to 5G.
We're calling it America First, 5G First.
Well, our strategy is called the 5G Fast Plan, a plan to facilitate America's superiority in 5G technology.
Connected devices for health applications, which I love, has the capacity to make people healthier, as I understand it, a lot of medical applications.
Industry is not asking the government for money to build 5G networks. They're asking us to cut the red tape that surrounds infrastructure deployment.
We cannot let today's red tape strangle the 5G future.
The red tape slows and sometimes stops the building of densified network facilities necessary for 5G.
As we continue our efforts to keep government out of the way so that America can continue its leadership for America to win the race to 5G.
One path is the government regulatory path. The other path is the private enterprise free market. Gales of creative destruction, Schumpeter path. Have you ever heard that? Gales of creative destruction? It just means let it rip. The new replaces the old.
With 5G, we're on the cusp of another era of American innovation. It means an even more connected world for everyone around us, unlocking the potential of the Internet of Things to become safer, healthier, and more sustainable for our future.
You know, sometimes, look, we all believe in the 10th Amendment, but sometimes you have to override it. By the way, the 1996 bill permits that kind of override. We're not here to be completely heavy-handed, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And some of these states or cities that don't want to cooperate want to shake us down. We can't allow obstacles and barriers to stop this movement. That's all.
And this happened in Canada. I mean, there were some activists I was working with up there that said, well, you know, we won a victory. We got the Public Utilities Commission to allow us opt out. And I said, boy, that's divide and conquer. They just got rid of the people that were raising hell. So, you know, that's not the answer. We need to opt out everybody.
An opt-out is an agreement to pay to not be harmed. An opt-out is volunteering into extortion. An opt-out says that if I don't pay you, you have the right to harm me. So that doesn't work.
This is a mandate. This is being pushed down your throat
by a company that is not responsive, by a government that is not responsible, and it's being done in a collusion that's designed to undermine the individual rights of individual people in communities across the country and around the world.
The definition of a smart grid is a wireless system that will fundamentally turn every single appliance in your home into the equivalent of a transmitting cell phone. That's every computer, every television, every furnace, every air conditioner, every coffee machine, every printer, every single appliance that you have in your house will eventually, in a smart grid, have an antenna that's embedded into it that will transmit your usage data to a smart meter on the outside of your home that will then transmit your usage data to another tower receiving that usage signal that will then go to the utility company for supposedly billing purposes. Not all signals will just be about your individual use. There will be aggregate meters that will bounce signal from house to house to house within a neighborhood that will then accumulate all of the usage data that will transmit that to the utility company. Now, what that will do is that the end metering system that is transmitting all of that data will be firing an RF signal at many, many times a second, which will increase the average homeowner's radio frequency radiation exposure exponentially.
This picture shows some aphids on the leaf of an orange tree shortly after radar equipment was installed at a nearby airport a number of years ago. I noticed that every few seconds all the aphids would tense up in unison and do sort of a little dance, as you see in the picture. Upon further investigation, I found that the interval of time between the activity of each dance coincided exactly with the rotation of the radar rotor device at the airport, which was a distance of approximately 14 miles.
The antenna arrays create this steerable beam, which helps concentrate the energy. The beams get pointed at the user.
The DNA inside you, the mitochondrial DNA, you can trace unchanged to your mother, her mother, her mother, right the way back to the beginning of the human race in Africa, the Stone Age. It is unchanged, the mitochondria. And that is being unchanged in your children, which means if you damage it, your child could be genetically damaged, then her child, and her child, and her child, forever. You are condemning the future generations of every single child.
But seems like many people don't want to believe that. If you are one of those people that thinks that every conspiracy theory is just a bunch of bullshit, and you believe the words of your mainstream media and government without doing any research by yourself, I got some good stuff for you today. Let's look into some government documents, maybe you will believe those. Let's start with Project Bizarre, which was a part of Project Pandora. In 1962, the CIA discovered that the US Embassy in Moscow was bombarded with electromagnetic radiation. The signal was composed of several frequencies. The Pandora project was intended to investigate and gather data on this Russian experiment. The embassy personnel was not informed of the existence of this beam or of the Pandora project, because your government doesn't give a shit about you. These are declassified documents of Project Bizarre. It says, the central nervous system of primates has been penetrated directly or indirectly by non-thermal modulated microwave radiation at power density levels from 4 milliwatts down to 1 milliwatts per square centimeter. The tests so far have established that the central nervous system was disrupted directly or indirectly after exposure to low-level non-thermal 4 to 5 milliwatts modulated S-band microwave radiation for periods between 10 and 19 days. So let's see what is S-band microwave radiation. The S-band is part of the electromagnetic spectrum covering frequencies from 2 to 4 GHz. So it's like Wi-Fi. On the next page I found this. The Soviets have reported in the open literature that humans subjected to low-level modulated microwave radiation show adverse clinical and physiological effects. The ARPA test results have demonstrated the feasibility of causing adverse biological effects on the central nervous system of primates. The potential of exerting a degree of control on human behavior by low-level selectively modulated microwave radiation should be investigated for potential weapon applications. Please understand that these documents are from 1967, and if a government hears the word weapon, for sure they will keep researching. This was just the start. So this is pretty good proof from your government that shows us that electromagnetic radiation can harm us in many ways. And this was only the early start of this research. It gets much more interesting when you start using millimeter waves. There is much more. I found many more documents. Let me show you some more stuff. This document is called The Invisible Third World War. Electromagnetic Mind Control, the Moscow Signal. Protected by the general public's unwillingness to believe that such things can actually happen, Soviet forces have been beaming invisible microwave radiation at Americans for more than 20 years, mysteriously triggering cancer, heart problems, cataracts and emotional stress. So let me explain a little bit about modulated waves for those of you who don't understand. According to most of these documents, electromagnetic radiation has little or no effect on humans when it's a static signal. This means sending out a certain signal on a frequency and not changing it. But as soon as you start to change the signal, like in these waveforms for example, it is now a modulated wave. And in my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but all electromagnetic radiation these days are using modulated waves. It is required to be able to send data, and it's happening on more and more frequencies each day. But now we are going to the next level by opening up all frequencies up to 19 kHz. The things you can do with microwaves is pretty insane. The microwave auditory effect, also known as the microwave hearing effect, consists of the human perception of audible clicks or even speech induced by pulsed or modulated radio frequencies. That's right, you can record an audio message, transform it into radio frequencies and beam it into someone's head. This has been used by governments around the world to mind control people or to make them go insane. Let's continue with another CIA document. The effects of electromagnetic radiation on biological systems. This is from 1993. At present, a significant body of evidence have been collected on the ability of microwave in the millimeter range to bring about biological effects, including those on cellular level. It has been found that microwaves can influence the process of gene expression. And if you continue reading the document, it will explain that it can even alter your DNA. So, is this the reason why we need faster internet? I don't want it. Here is another document from 1977. Morphological, functional and biochemical studies conducted in humans and animals revealed that millimeter waves caused changes in the body manifested in structural alterations in the skin and internal organs, qualitative and quantitative changes of the blood and bone marrow composition, and changes of the conditioned reflex activity, tissue respiration, activity of enzymes participating in the process of tissue respiration and nucleic metabolism. The degree of unfavorable effect of millimeter waves depended on the duration of the radiation and individual characteristics of the organism. Man, it's pretty crazy stuff, right? Our governments are telling us that this radiation in the air is safe for us, but at the same time they have these documents that prove it's not. And there are lots of documents, I'm only picking out a few. Let's do one more. This is a document about an experiment they did with rats. A modulated electromagnetic field as a factor of selective influence upon the mechanism of goal-orientated behavior in animals. What they did is, they set up a cage where there is food on one side, behind a brass grating floor to which they could apply voltage. The rats could avoid the grated floor by going around it. First they released the rats a few times so that they knew where to find the food, And then they added voltage so that when the rats tried to get directly to the food, they would get shocked. After 2 or 3 times, the rats figured out that they needed to go around the grating to get the food. Then they repeated the test while radiating the rats with modulated radio waves. In the first 5 to 20 minutes, the rats experienced a disturbance in the avoidance situation, meaning they got shocked more and more trying to get to the food. Also, the reaction time became significantly lower. When they exposed the rats to the radiation for longer periods of time, they even stopped trying to get to the food. They stopped moving and even stopped swallowing food when it was inserted in their mouth. They didn't die, but they needed 24 days to recover from this.
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.